When people hear WHO nutrition guidelines, many assume they're complicated, outdated, or unrealistic. Official health advice often feels distant from everyday life, especially when social media promotes quick fixes and extreme diets. But the truth is, the World Health Organization's nutrition guidelines are not complicated at all. In fact, when explained simply, they are some of the most practical and flexible eating principles available. The WHO does not promote a single diet, meal plan, or food list. Its guidance is designed for people across different cultures, income levels, and lifestyles. That's why the focus is not on perfection or strict rules, but on patterns, what people eat most of the time over many years. At the core of WHO nutrition guidance is one central idea: health is shaped more by overall eating habits than by individual foods or nutrients. This is a major reason why the guidelines avoid telling people to count calories obsessively or eliminate entire food groups. Instead, they focus on what consistently reduces disease risk at a population level. One of the clearest messages is about food processing. The WHO encourages diets that are built mainly around minimally processed foods. These are foods that still resemble their original form, such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, eggs, fish, and simple home-prepared meals. These foods naturally contain fiber, protein, and nutrients that help the body regulate blood sugar, appetite, and inflammation. In contrast, the WHO warns about heavy reliance on ultra-processed foods. These are packaged, ready-to-eat products that often contain refined starches, added sugars, industrial fats, and additives. The issue is not occasional convenience foods, but when these products become the default choice day after day. Global evidence consistently links this pattern to higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and certain cancers. Another key guideline relates to fruits and vegetables. The WHO encourages regular intake because these foods provide fiber, vitamins, minerals, and protective compounds that support long-term health. This advice is not about hitting an exact number every day, but about making plant foods a visible and regular part of meals. Protein is also addressed, but not in an extreme way. The WHO supports adequate protein intake from a variety of sources, including both plant and animal foods, depending on culture and availability. The emphasis is on balance and food quality rather than high protein or low protein extremes. When it comes to fats, the WHO's guidance has evolved over time. Rather than fearing fat itself, the focus is on fat quality. Diets higher in unsaturated fats from sources like fish, nuts, seeds, and plant oils are associated with better cardiovascular health than diets high in industrial trans fats and heavily processed fats. Sugar and salt are often misunderstood parts of the guidelines. The WHO does not suggest eliminating sugar entirely. Instead, it highlights reducing free and added sugars, especially from sugary drinks and highly sweetened products. Liquid sugars are of particular concern because they bypass normal fullness signals and are easy to overconsume. Salt is addressed in a similar way. The biggest source of excess sodium is not home cooking, but packaged and restaurant foods. The WHO encourages awareness of hidden salt rather than extreme restriction at every meal. What makes these guidelines powerful is their flexibility. The WHO recognizes that people eat in different ways across cultures. A healthy diet can be Asian, Mediterranean, African, vegetarian, or mixed. The guidelines are not about specific cuisines, but about shared principles that support health regardless of cultural context. Another important aspect is sustainability. The WHO explicitly avoids recommending diets that are too restrictive to maintain. Health improves through habits that people can repeat calmly over time, not through short-term challenges or intense rules. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. The guidelines also move away from moral language around food. Foods are not labeled as good or bad. Instead, the focus is on frequency and proportion. When healthier foods make up most of the diet, flexibility becomes harmless rather than risky. Importantly, the WHO acknowledges that food choices are shaped by environment, time, and access. Nutrition is not just a personal responsibility issue. This perspective reduces guilt and recognizes that improving health requires both individual habits and supportive food systems. So, what do the WHO nutrition guidelines mean in real life? They mean eating mostly real foods, limiting heavily processed products, drinking fewer sugary beverages, and building meals that are satisfying and balanced. They mean not chasing perfection, not fearing food, and not following extremes. These guidelines may not sound exciting, and that's exactly why they work. They are based on decades of global research, not trends. They aim to reduce disease risk quietly and steadily, rather than promise dramatic overnight results. In a world full of nutrition noise, the WHO's guidance offers clarity, not by adding more rules, but by simplifying what actually matters. When you understand the principles, healthy eating becomes less stressful and more achievable. If you want more clear, science-based explanations without hype or confusion, feel free to follow along. Sometimes the best advice is the kind that doesn't shout, it simply works.